AI with ChatGPT and stuff coming about and really coming to the fore, I feel there's a lot of use cases. I've always been working 6 days, and even now I still work 6 days. Especially like my parents and stuff, they've always sort of had a job, and they've always sort of thought, right, once you get a permanent full-time job, like you've struck gold there. But they were encouraging to, hey, you have the potential of actually working for yourself and owning your own clinic one day, which to me sounded like a really far-fetched dream. When you're working a 9 to 5, one of the disadvantages is you've got to be at a certain place at a certain time, right? Whereas when you're working for yourself, you know, if you're not seeing a client or whatever, you could be anywhere. I'm bringing on a team, and that'll free me up, and that'll allow me to then work on whatever else I want to work on. At the time, it happened to be an app. So I had a little bit of understanding of computer programming and things like that. I tried to get help to get it developed with the freelancers and overseas sort of model. Bit of back and forth, and didn't quite work out for me. So I just figured it'd be easier for me to just do it myself.
Hassan, can you just tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Hassan. Obviously, I'm an exercise physiologist here in Sydney, Australia, and I have a clinic. So I'm a full-time exercise physiologist. Yeah. So then I have a side business as well called MyClerk. MyClerk sort of started off late last year, sort of thing, through an accelerator program, and then I've been working on that. More on the side.
And so your plan from now is what in terms of for the day schedule?
In the day, so we're heading back to the clinic. We've got one client waiting for us there, and then we've got a couple of home visits, and then in the afternoon we'll probably head back to Parramatta. I've got a co-working space there. And
I got to ask, just with this MyClerk jacket,
yeah,
very nice, very snazzy.
I'm MyClerk on the outside, holistic exercise physiology on the inside. So I had a different idea initially. It was called MyROM, so My Range of Motion.
Yes,
it's more
I do remember
specific
that.
to the range of motion assessments.
Yeah.
And then as I sort of pivoted into more clinical admin, note-taking, I sort of looked around at different names and stuff. Yeah, so I landed on MyClerk because it's all about AI assistance now at the moment.
Yes.
So imagine an AI clerk. So I attended a couple of like AI in medicine sort of events. And so that's where I discovered, AI itself, and then also the applications in medicine. So things like radiology and stuff was an early adopter in AI. And then more recently with the advent of, generative AI with ChatGPT and stuff coming about and really coming to the fore, I feel there's a lot of use cases. I think it's here to stay, basically. It's not even a way of the future anymore because it's already here.
It's already here.
And it's not gone away, I don't think, in a hurry. So see you later, Jenny.
See you next week.
You've got both these. You've got the physio, you've got MyClerk. How much revenue are you roughly making from each separately and then together?
So with MyClerk, as I said, so we're still pre-revenue, to be honest.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of sort of beta testing and stuff that you want to try and do, make sure all the product's ready. Although having said that, we have sort of hit the sales cycle. So yeah, so still zero income from that.
Right.
And then with the clinic, look, obviously it goes up and down, varies. Ballpark figure, 2 to 250. I know that's a pretty big ballpark, but yeah, in terms of revenue, obviously that doesn't factor in the costs. So there's wages and rents and stuff you got to pay. I think it's a good sort of income at the moment.
Of that money you're getting, is a lot of it just going straight back into innovation and kind of expanding?
Yeah, so try and put back a little bit more into it, and that's sort of why I guess MyClerk could be sponsored by Holistic Exercise Physiology.
Yeah,
obviously helps it as well. And also, like, to be honest, with winter it has sort of cooled, to pardon the pun. I mean, that's the nature of small business, right? So we're trying to get things back on the road and get busier again, I suppose.
So is it quite seasonal in a way, is it?
Yeah, it can be seasonal, but also I think it depends on, I guess, what you're doing in terms of your marketing efforts and all that kind of stuff. It's a catch-22, right? So it's like, when you're busy, you're not thinking about marketing, then as you get quiet, you're like, all right, we better focus on sales and marketing and follow up on inactive clients and things like that. And that takes, a month or two before they actually kick in.
And sales and marketing, is it more social media? That's where you're pushing?
Most of the clients just find us on Google, and then the other big source would just be referrals. And again, it's one of those things where I haven't done a proper online digital marketing sort of scheme, kind of because we didn't really need to. But then that's probably not the best way to think about it, really. Yeah, but that's the benefit of having an employee. Yeah. Because they can open up and someone can attend to your clients as well.
100%. Because you only got your employee not so long ago, or was this last year where you started?
A year now, 12 months. So they started last August. Time flies.
Were you skeptical at all about hiring employees initially?
And I'll probably talk more about this later, but my journey's always been very incremental. So it hasn't been like take a massive leap of faith and hire someone full time. So I started with some subcontractors and felt it was overall a good enough experience to then employ someone. And he only started 2 days a week, and now he's coming 4 days a week. Come on. Which you feel like is getting higher than it was last week this time?
No, I think about the same.
About the same, okay.
And when you kind of buy these products, obviously some of them are very expensive, do you kind of get it on a loan, or how do you kind of fund it?
Honestly, my approach is always try and cash. Cash. Yeah.
Cash is king.
Cash is key. Yeah. So I will always avoid sort of any sort of loan stuff. What that means is that even the setup for the clinic wasn't sort of on day one. It wasn't like overnight. It sort of built up over time.
And you're constantly looking at kind of upgrading and bringing in new equipment.
Now we're at a point where we've sort of got most of what we need. When we first started, it was sort of bare bones. MVP concept, the minimum viable product. There's always that thing where I need this, I need that. Whereas now it's like, I would like that. Right, good. But no, that sounds good, like you're increasing your hours.
In terms of MyClerk, are you using that in this business?
Yes. So the point of MyClerk is to help automate some of the letter writing at the moment, right? We've got to write a letter back to the doctor to sort of say, hey, so-and-so came in and this is what we did. That letter, normally if you'd write it by hand, it might take you 15, 20 minutes. That's what we've sort of automated. So we do use it for that. This is what a typical note would look like, what the patient presented with. I've made some notes on what they said and all that kind of stuff, what the plan is, etc., etc. So what I would need to do, because if it's a Medicare client, I now need to write a letter to the GP to explain, hey, test dummy came down today and that's what they did. You would go write a GP letter. Okay, and then all you're going to do is copy paste your notes in there, in that little box, and then you hit generate, and it's similar to ChatGPT, but it's kind of pre-prompted, so it knows what you were trying to get out of it, so you don't have to actually sit there and actually prompt and do what they call prompt engineering part.
And this is where obviously a lot of admin time is saved.
Correct. So so basically then it comes out with the letter, and then this one, if you're sort of not happy with it, you can always regenerate and modify, and then essentially, if you're happy with it, you would just copy from here all the way down, okay? And then you just paste that into your, most people will have letter templates in their PMS, your patient management software. Copy and paste, and then away you go. So what might have taken you 10, 15 minutes could take you, no more than a minute. But essentially, looking at $10 a month, hopefully fairly economical. If you've got the volume, then it makes a lot of sense. And the idea is, based on feedback, we would iterate and build more features down the track. So we're about 3 minutes shy of 12:30. So if it's all right with you, we'll probably start making a move for the 12:30 home visit.
Absolutely.
Especially when you run your own business, in a service-based industry, you're trading time for money, right? So you do want to be back to back. If you're sitting around, then it's not great. So.
Okay, so where are we off to right now?
So we're doing a home visit, literally 3 minutes away.
Right.
That. So, we've got a lovely client here. You'll get to meet Angela. It's serious when Angela goes quiet.
And what do you think of Hassan?
I do love Hassan.
There we go.
So, I have another gentleman that works with Hassan, and he comes once a week. And I did have the option at one point to have him twice, but I said no. I prefer to have Hassan. It's all for good fun and laughter of both of us. And as I say, normally we might not be so PG related.
Fair. I understand you've toned it down a little bit, and we appreciate it.
Well.
What were you doing initially before this?
How far back do you want to go?
Let's go to when you were working at the aged care facility.
So obviously that was a full-time job. So how I landed that is we had to do practicum placement. Obviously they saw something in me, so they offered me a role. And then stayed there for about 1.5 years, all in all. And it was during that time that I actually started my business on the side on the weekends.
Obviously at that time you're working for someone else,
and
then you're kind of transitioning into that phase where you're starting, something on the side. And then obviously now you've taken that to a bigger extent with what you're doing now. What would you say is that kind of main difference? Going from working for someone else to now working on your own and being, responsible for yourself.
Yeah, big difference in terms of obviously when you work for yourself, you call all the shots, which obviously sounds amazing, but has its pros and cons.
For sure.
When you're working for someone else, it's someone else's headache to fill your diary and make sure you got something to do and all that kind of stuff. And then also what you do, the services you deliver, you sort of just get told, this is what we're doing. I mean, if you're working in a nice place, you might have a team around you where you collaborate and communicate about that sort of stuff. But when you work for yourself, you can really just come up with things on the fly and really be quite creative.
And then so what happened from that point on?
So basically from my full-time gig, I ended up going 3 days a week. And the idea was that, with the extra time that I've got, I'll now build up my my side business. Ever since I started my Saturday job, I've always been working 6 days, and even now I still work 6 days. I think of hours as the time I'm spending with clients, but there's a lot of hours that go into it outside of that as well. So yeah, so when I was doing that Monday through to Friday, I'd be working at the aged care facility. Saturday would be the clients I'd see at the medical center, and then eventually when I dropped to 4 days, it was still 6 days worth of work, right?
Yeah, so more than your average 9 to 5.
Yeah, correct. And then obviously, as I said, the time that goes into it, before and after. So, in terms of invoicing and following up on that, or even just, patient reports and things, the stuff we talked about with the MyClerk, and even like beforehand, like the marketing, the sales and stuff, that's all stuff that you got to do. It's sort of outside of direct contact hours, I guess.
I mean, how did your family or closer friends, when you went from having a nice stable 9 to 5 and then going to trying to start something on your own, what was their kind of view? Was it all positive, or did they maybe have some doubt?
I kind of envy the people that have a business background in their family, because I think that it makes it a lot easier, especially like my parents and stuff. They've always sort of had a job, and they've always sort of thought, right, once you get a permanent full-time job, like you've struck gold there. It was challenging, but having said that, I mean, I had a couple of older cousins who were always very encouraging, even though they were working themselves, but they were encouraging to, hey, you have the potential of actually working for yourself and owning your own clinic one day, which to me sounded like a really far-fetched dream, but one thing leads to another. So initially there was a little bit of pushback, I suppose, or a little bit of resistance to say, oh, look, this is something new and scary. I don't know if you want to go into that world.
How did you kind of overcome that?
Well, again, because it was so incremental, right? Because it was like I still had my full-time job when I started it on the side, so it was just an additional thing anyway.
Yeah.
And I didn't go into it full-time until after my research phase had finished. And by that time, I've already been doing this for 2 years, so I have a pretty good idea of, hey, how does it all work?
Why did you want to start a business?
I think it's sort of the dream anyway, right? Like be your own boss and all that kind of stuff. The people that have that drive to do their own thing have this sense of, if I had my own operation, I would do it way better, or I would do it this way differently. And then obviously the potential upside to having your own business, as hard as it is, but then A, the flexibility, B, the potential upside in terms of revenue or opportunities and things like that.
Speaking of revenue, how did that change as you went from working for someone else to working on your own?
I guess you take a bit of a pay cut, right? And that's where, for me at least, my journey has been very much, it's sort of incremental. So, when you have a full-time job, you do something on the side, it doesn't really matter how much you make. But back then, you don't really care because you're sort of starting out and that's what you're going to do, right? And then as you sort of grow, and obviously the revenue hopefully will come up as well.
And I mean, going back to what you were saying earlier about how you were growing kind of incrementally, do you ever kind of look back and think like, oh man, if I wasn't, say, so conservative and just went all in on this business, that you would have potentially, say, grown quicker or be earning more now? Yeah,
look, to be honest, I think going back to why I got into it, for me, a lot of it was around the flexibility and like the lifestyle of it. I mean, potentially some would argue like it sort of capped or limited my growth. We could have grown a lot quicker than it have, but for me, a big priority has always been like, maintaining a certain lifestyle. And what I mean by that is not like, going and spending a lot of money or whatever, but in terms of, being able to work to a schedule that I am comfortable with, spending time with family and now with the kids as well. And also, when you're working a 9 to 5, one of the disadvantages is you've got to be at a certain place at a certain time, right? Whereas when you're working for yourself, if you're not seeing a client or whatever, you could be anywhere. So I wouldn't really say I've looked back and regretted that, oh, we could have grown a lot faster or whatever. I think I'm happy with the way things are going.
Yeah.
Considering COVID and all that kind of stuff that's come in the way, we're fortunate to be alive and the business is still going. So that was like, a pivotal moment for me in my business, because that's, as I said, that's the first time I'm opening up my own clinic, my own space. Yeah. And having, for the first time, a fixed cost. Because before that, I never had a fixed cost, right? So what I mean by that is if I'm going to a medical center, I'm paying them a percentage of my income. If I have a 2-week holiday, sure, I don't make any money, but at least I'm not losing any money. Whereas if you're now signed up for a rental, doesn't matter if you're on holidays or if there's COVID and you're not seeing any clients, you still got to make rent. And then like the worst case scenario proved to be true, right?
Yeah.
Like literally you're not making any revenue.
Yeah.
Because A, no one knows you, and B, you literally like legally cannot open your doors.
What were you feeling at that time? Like you said, it was a bit of a struggle.
Ideally, you have enough sort of what they call runway, so you've got a bit of cash in the bank to give yourself a few months to get through it, which fortunately I had. And again, the bills they were there. It wasn't like before, but it wasn't as much of a stressor. I was still seeing clients and still able to get some revenue in.
And then in terms of going through this, so you're building your own business, obviously there's going to be a little bit of sacrifice involved.
Yeah.
In terms of for you, like let's say whether it be family life or social life, did that affect you at all?
I think doing your own business has actually allowed me to be there for the important times.
Yeah.
For example, when when my wife's given birth, for example, was able to be there and take a week off, and sure, obviously wasn't generating any revenue. This is pre having employees and things like that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I was applying for leave or having to have difficult conversations with any bosses or managers.
I know.
Guys do a slow walk.
Coming on from where we left off in the car, a bit of stress initially with the whole COVID thing, but you still managed to have a few clients. What happened from there?
Open up the clinic with the dreams of now we're doing our own thing. But because of the whole COVID situation, it really was a matter of buckling down and just, put your head down and just get through that phase. And I think for me personally, it sort of took me up until about late 2022, 23, where I was comfortable enough to be like, all right, we've got steady work coming through. I'm comfortable enough to now start expanding the team, and that's where I started to sort of subcontract. So I started off with that worked well enough to then give me the strength to employ, and that's where Jason comes into the picture.
We got to talk about Launchpad now. What's that all about? Where did that all start?
In 2023, early on, like Feb, March, you do your New Year's stuff. You're like, all right, I'm bringing on a team, and that'll free me up, and that'll allow me to then work on whatever else I want to work on. At the time, it happened to be an app, and then the opportunity for Ignition sort of came up, or the accelerator program at Launchpad. Went ahead and actually developed and built the app over the Christmas break, and then started this year. It was all right. Really sort of go forward with it.
Obviously, you got some sort of assistance when it came to learning how to code and...
No, so I sort of learned how to code. I sort of picked that up when I was doing my research. So I had a little bit of understanding of computer programming and things like that. And then a lot of the coding stuff is you just pick it up as you sort of need to. I tried to get help to get it developed with the freelancers and overseas sort of model. Bit of back and forth, and didn't quite work out for me. So I just figured it'd be easier for me to just do it myself.
In terms of MyClerk at the moment, so I remember you saying you kind of put that on the back burner for now.
Yeah.
To focus on personal branding.
So having a personal brand, like if you just show up to someone's door and say, knock, knock, here's a product, I think it's amazing for you. Do you want to buy it?
It works, trust me.
So that, whereas if they sort of know you, they sort of familiar with who you are and stuff, and they trust you. And then you say, look, I know this industry, and they sort of know that you know the industry kind of thing. And then you come out with a product, and it's like, okay, cool. This guy knows his stuff. In fact, there's a guy that I sort of follow, Daniel Priestley. He has this idea of key person of influence. So if you can become a key person of influence in your industry or your niche, and you've got enough sort of content out there that people can watch you, and they sort of build that number of contacts with you, when you do come out with a sale or a pitch of a sale, then you're a lot more likely to be successful because, you've already built that rapport. We've done that groundwork, so to speak.
So in terms of your future ambitions with both your businesses, really, where do you see it? So for example, 10 years time from now.
The rough idea that I do have is, I think the clinic is going well. That's a good thing. We want to try and continue that. From a personal perspective, I'd like to get to a point where I'm not as involved, like day-to-day running of the business, and the systems and processes are in place so that, that it's running smoothly without too much input from my perspective. I'd still like to be involved. Like I still see myself clinically involved in seeing clients because I enjoy that. I don't want to be completely in an office like this and not be on the ground, because then you sort of lose touch.
You still want the human interaction.
Yeah, you still want that
yeah.
touch and sort of know what's happening on the ground. So I'll still be involved to some extent, but at least have the option to step away and the business doesn't suffer if you go on a 6-month holiday. And then with the other stuff, it's really just sort of take it, you know, as it comes, really. As we were talking about earlier, just sort of do the work and then see what it leads to, you know, what it leads to kind of thing. Whether it's the app or the personal branding stuff. For me, I guess it's that satisfaction of life metric that you can't really quantify, which becomes really important. But also, like, you know, I'm sure with my kids getting older and my responsibility as a dad might grow as well. And so you just take things as they come. I feel like I don't want to sort of set a hard limit on like this is what we need to achieve kind of thing.
Thanks for agreeing to film with us today. What was the kind of reasoning behind wanting to be on the video? Yeah,
to be honest, it was more just intrigue. You know, you guys reached out, and I'm always sort of keen to learn new things from other people, and I thought, you know what, I'll probably learn something from these boys.
For those out there, you know, they want to become business owners, have grand plans, but don't know how to kind of get started initially.
Yep.
Do you have any kind of words of, say, advice for them?
Probably talk to people that are doing it, because you have an idea of what the world looks like on the other side, but that's not always the case. And the best way to find out is probably just talk to the people that are doing it. So don't be afraid. Like if you have an idea of, hey, I'd like to be, I don't know, a restaurant owner or run this type of a business, actually just call people up and be like, hey, this is what I'm looking to do. Can I shout you coffee and can we sit down somewhere? Because if you don't ask, you don't get. The worst thing that can happen is they'll say no, I don't have time, or they'll say come back next week. That could save you like a lot of time and headache. Just having those conversations. You reach out to 10 people, you might only get 2 calls, but those 2 conversations would be like really, really significant. Beyond that, I suppose, I guess what I've done is hedge your bets to some extent and then have a go. Because I guess the cliched advice is just jump in there and just have a go. But that's not always the best idea, because obviously, you know, you have responsibilities, you have other duties as well. So have a bit of a runway, or, you know, figure out what you need to get done at a bare minimum. Secure, you know, hedge your bets is kind of the easy way to put it. But then do also have a go, like, you know, because if you don't get out there, then you're not gonna.
You'll never know.
You'll never know. Exactly, that's true. Yeah.